On the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there's having themselves a great day. A lot is going on, obviously, in the world. Those of you that miss a day, you miss a lot, and there's truly gobs and gobs going on these days. Obviously, a lot going on with the politicians, the political sphere, if you will. Got a little bit of stuff around polling, not a lot, but a little bit. Something worth checking out. Also got some interesting news of what also is going on around, one, the nation right now, and two, the world. Believe it or not, there's some interesting spots heating up. There's peace deals obviously made that we've heard about. But there's just a lot going on. And there's a lot of people paying attention to what's going on in the United States and the way we're handling this political environment. Again, it's amazing. A recent study came out. I think 92% of all news stories done about Donald Trump over the past 4 years have been negative. And something like 60% of all news stories about Biden have been positive. Now, the fact that there is even a 40% is probably affiliated to Hannity and Tucker Carlson, most likely from Fox, because they're probably the only two that really do talk about some of the wilder stuff that's going on out there. But there is a lot to be said. Now, speaking of polls, as I was saying, Trafalgar Group is one of the polling groups right now that is truly one to pay attention to, at least if you're someone that's interested in knowing the truth. As it seems, 2016 and 2018, they were right on the money, and what they're saying for 2020 also looks much the same. They show Trump leading in some of these battleground states that there's some concern about. Now, there are a lot of other polling groups that might be somewhat centrist in their thinking, which they, of course, would be labeled right because the progressive left has really, really pushed the boundaries over quite a bit. And you've got some polls that are tend to be a bit on the left side just in general. What's consistent about all of those is they've tended to be wrong. They were wrong in 2016, wrong in 2018, probably wrong now. And there's a lot of people that feel they're really out of touch, or, in my opinion, their polling samples are so specific that they're just not getting good results. They think they're getting a broad swath of society, but in reality, they're still getting a very microcosm and assuming it's much larger. That being said, let's hear at least a little snippet as to why they say Trafalgar Group is actually a little bit better at this game.
Polling company that you want to get on your radar, it's called the Trafalgar Group. It was the only polling company that correctly identified in 2016 within the Real Clear Politics polling average that Donald Trump would defeat Hillary Clinton in the battleground state of Michigan. Flash forward to 2018, and Real Clear News named Trafalgar Group the most accurate polling company to correctly predict the outcomes of the 2018 congressional news cycle. Flash forward to 2020, and we see that the Trafalgar Group, again, is a rare voice out there saying that the president is winning in battleground states like Florida, Michigan, and North Carolina. The Trafalgar Group is known for its ability to tap those untappable Trump voters that sometimes evade traditional polling companies. These traditional polling companies sometimes undercount or undersample Trump voters. The Trafalgar Group says it has that secret sauce to know how to reach them. Now, how accurate will the Trafalgar Group prove in the 2020 election cycle? Only time will tell. We will keep you posted here at justthenews.com.
She's cute. Anyway, so there's a lot to be said about the Trafalgar Group and their accuracy and their abilities to, I'm just going to kill that because it probably will start playing, but their abilities to hit the nail on the head. Now, again, a lot of the polls are out there right now are saying that Biden's leading a little bit. And let me just say, this is with a lot of the mail-in ballots. There's a lot of question as to whether that's going to be a lot more heavy leaning, and that a lot of the people from the riot are tending to vote in person. Yes, some of them are voting by mail, absentee, and all those things. But statistically and looking at the big picture, a lot of in-person voting is expected to occur and is expected to be right-leaning. So these numbers are starting to shift because there was this huge push for mail-in at first, and then not too long after that, they started doing, I think, early in-person voting, which I think a lot of Republicans probably jumped on. And then on top of that, we're going to have the day of election, which is going to be interesting, I think, for many reasons. Not just the election, but I kind of have a funny feeling some other crazy stuff's going to be going on that day. I don't know. It's a hunch. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Now, again, these Real Clear Politics shows a tightening race in Pennsylvania. The Real Clear is the Trafalgar people, and they are seeing Pennsylvania change in very significant ways. It makes you wonder why Biden has put a lid on his campaign. Is it because, and pure speculation, but is it because, one, they just think they've got it in the bag already? I kind of have a hard time with that. Usually the last weeks and days of the campaign are the most important, right? It's what leaves that taste in the voter's mouth. Maybe he feels that he's already gotten most of his votes out of the way because of the mail-in. Maybe the gaffes and things that he says kind of when he goes off cue or off script, maybe those are hurting him more than the press wants to admit. But whatever the case is, the polls, even the ones that aren't Trafalgar Group, are starting to show this waning of the lead. Biden does not have it in the bag in Pennsylvania, and it seems to be a very contended area among some others. So again, they're talking about how Trafalgar Group is, again, showing better examples. Something I want to bring up, because I think it's a hypocrisy that exists. I like talking about those. It's a lot of fun. Of course, the Dodgers won. That's awesome. Woohoo! I even played for a team called the Dodgers at one point in my life. I've got love for the Dodgers, no question about it. But I really stopped caring like back when Steve Sachs and Ron Cey and Steve Garvey and Fernando Valenzuela, that's when I liked the Dodgers, like forever ago. Well, whatever. But apparently, Justin Turner has returned to the field for the World Series celebration despite testing positive. And that is somewhat curious. I mean, again, just from all the discussions and all the different rhetoric that we've heard, it seems to be kind of irresponsible. I get why he's doing it. They are kids, and if they, get it, they're very likely to become completely healthy. But he's touching this. He was hugging and all sorts of affection and all sorts of stuff like that, and touching this trophy with everyone else is going to touch. It's probably going to spread to others. So again, it's questionable, and I wouldn't normally come out and have this discussion per se, but I did think it was kind of an interesting hypocrisy, and don't really hear people screaming too much about it yet. I mean, it was brought up in Breitbart, so we'll see where it goes. Now again, after peddling Trump-Russia hit pieces before the 2016 election, mainstream media's totally ignored this Bobulinski bombshell that has been going on. So if you haven't heard, there's this guy named Bobulinski that was a Navy guy, had a Navy brother, had a Navy father, and apparently a Navy grandfather or something. It's a long line of prestigious careers in the United States Armed Services. And thank you for your service. Apparently, Bobulinski was actually in business with Hunter Biden and some others. And he's been discussing a lot of his findings. He's been sharing his emails. He's been sharing the devices. He's been sharing this information. Now, my speculation, truly, off the top, I don't really think his motives are as pure as I just want to help get this news out because the public needs to know. We could have used this probably months ago. What I do think happened, though, is when Adam Schiff started speaking poorly about Bobulinski and his family, and calling it Russian information and Russian disinformation without any evidence, mind you, it seems, because he's making accusations when we've come to find out there was a laptop dropped off by Hunter Biden. There were business dealings done with another American individual who has served in the armed forces. And again, he's showing the evidence of the emails between him and Hunter. And calling that Russian disinformation, it just seems strange, right? It didn't come from Russia. Russia didn't tell Biden to take the laptop there, right? So it's kind of strange. It's sort of a little, again, weird kind of hypocrisy that goes along. We also just saw that I shared yesterday, but NBC News shared a video or shared footage, news, if you will. It's hard to call it that. But they shared information saying Vladimir Putin actually supports Joe Biden, prefers to have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris win the presidency in the United States. And that's just weird on a lot of levels. First off, NBC's sharing it. Very strange. Second off, who cares what Vladimir Putin thinks, right? I mean, we've been Russia. Then now all of a sudden we're going to spotlight Russia's president. And he's like, well, I give my opinion to Biden. Now, is he trying to do the opposite? Again, nothing about that is a good idea. And it's very strange that it was shared at all. So again, this weird hypocrisy that exists all over the place, and everybody wanted to run with the Russia, and after millions of dollars spent, $40 million spent, Mueller and all that stuff, all the interviews, all the warrants, all the stuff that happened, they couldn't pin anything on him. In fact, they had to try to impeach him for a phone call he had with a Ukrainian official saying he was doing a quid pro quo. They had to abandon the Russian thing entirely. You even still hear, like Adam Schiff saying, that still Russia, 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 even though they, again, have not proven anything. So here they are not talking about Bobulinski. It's just interesting how the game is played. Uber, and this is just one of those things. We've got a proposition going on out here. I think it's 22, if I remember correctly. But it's the proposition that has to do with making Uber drivers full-time drivers or whether or not they can stay contractors. Apparently voting yes for it means they can stay contractors. If you vote no, it means they have to become employees of the company. But whatever the case is, Uber has a competitor. It's called Lyft, for sure. There's some others, but this is the major one. And Uber has drivers give ratings. So when you get picked up and Uber around, you can give your driver a rating. And if your driver was good, you'll give him 5 stars frequently. And if your driver was horrible or did something weird or, something inappropriate or whatever the case was, then you can mark those drivers down. Now, there is this spin being placed on some of the people that are being terminated by Uber because of low customer service scores. Now, I've worked in customer service my whole life. Customer service is something I believe in, I think makes a huge difference. And in most businesses, if the customer service is awesome, you will retain more of your customers and you will probably get better word of mouth than people who have bad customer service. So customer service, in my mind, is number one. And if I take an Uber and the guy is horrible, or in one case, my girlfriend was the guy was frustrated, and it wasn't Uber. I think it was Lyft in that case. And he was like, I'll drop you off right here on the side of the freeway. And it's just like, what? So again, my girlfriend speaks English as a second language. So maybe she misunderstood. I don't know. But again, you hear crazy things, and, those are the people that you would give a bad rating to. And ultimately, if you get enough bad scores, you probably shouldn't work for the company. At least a lot of customers seem to kind of feel maybe that your customer service isn't good. Well, there's a lawsuit going on because someone's finding that these numbers typically follow people of minorities. And so they feel there's this unfairness in treating a minority on a customer service score, and that if they are not good, then they shouldn't be able to get fired, basically, which is kind of what unions do, by the way. So again, maybe that's someone that's like no on 22. I don't know. But I kind of wanted to just talk about this general premise and issue because I think it's interesting. And again, coming from a customer service background, I find that to be a very important service to offer no matter what your business is. Ultimately, no matter who you are and what you do, you have customers, right? Internal or external or both. And so you always have to kind of deal with your customers. It's very important. This is interesting, just with all the stuff going on. Nightline is hyping George Lopez, just kind of talking about Latino and Trump voters. And I don't know, this interesting little article. We're going to play it. I like George Lopez, and no matter what he says, because I don't even think he really does an awesome job covering this very well, but it does go very Cuban and what's going on down there and kind of asking George Lopez what he thinks about it. I thought it was pretty cool. And again, I like George Lopez a lot, just as a comedian, the show he's had in the past. I mean, I don't know. I've followed this guy for a number of years, and whether he's hard left or whatever, I still like him. I can't help it.
Latinos that are voting are listening, at least, to voting for Trump. Why is that?
You're going to get Latinos that are going to be Trumpers because of their self-loathing of their own community and of not being reminded of where they come from. The minute you start to have a good life, you don't want to be reminded of that life.
In Florida, the Latino electorate is dominated by the Cuban refugee population, who listen to Donald Trump's unsubstantiated claims that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are socialists.
These people are crazy. It's now the party of socialists, Marxists, and left-wing extremists.
I'm voting for Donald Trump because I believe he's the best for America. I believe socialists and communists is the sin.
Doesn't that guy kind of look like Mike Pence? And I mean that as a total compliment, but it is kind of funny. Doesn't he look like Mike Pence a little bit? I just thought it was funny.
For me, I'm from Cuba 42 years ago.
And a determination during this life-changing election to stand up for his people. Because, as he says, he's George Lopez.
Thank you. I love my community. I love Latino people all over the world.
I like George Lopez. I think he's a good guy. You know, whether he is or isn't, and I apologize if I'm wrong on that, and I really do, but I just like him. I think he's a good guy. So, Tucker Carlson, good on him, by the way, because he was one of the ones I actually had questions about. He spent a lot of time talking about stuff that I thought was, I don't know, a little deep state, but whatever. That was my opinion. But what's really going on right now, Tucker Carlson's breaking world records for the second time. He's now averaging 5.3 million viewers. That's huge. That is a huge swath of the pie. Every night, I guess it's 9 o'clock East. No, it's 8 o'clock Eastern, right? It's 5 o'clock here when he kicks on. Good show, and then Hannity follows right after. It's even kind of funny. Last night, happened to be watching when he did the handoff over to Hannity. And Hannity was cordial, but there was zero crosstalk. Zero crosstalk. And Hannity used to be number one. Now he's number two. Which, again, good on him for both of them. And they're back-to-back, and that's a great way to play the ratings game. But kudos to Tucker Carlson for pulling it off. In Michigan, there was an attempt to ban open carry weapons at polling places. Now, open carry is allowed in Michigan. It's not here. I'm not even close in California. You have to like lock it up, and you can't have ammo anywhere inside of it. It's like crazy. But the judge overturned this ban on the open carries. So again, a lot of things are trying to happen and sort of being blocked. And I think having Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court is going to do nothing but help us in the big picture, right? Just having that extra head in there, having that extra constitutionalist, I think is going to make a big difference when it comes push to shove. And we'll see what happens through this whole process that we've got in front of us. So the CEOs have been talking, the Twitter CEO, the Google CEO, and Facebook was supposed to, but apparently had technical glitches, which I always think it's funny when a technical company has technical glitches. But Twitter CEO says the New York Post can tweet again if it deletes the Hunter Biden report and then reposts it. And Cruz was really frustrated with this, basically saying that the only way New York Post can retweet, because as Jack Dorsey said, they can tweet right now. All they got to do is log in and then delete that original post, and then they can immediately repost it, and it'll go through. But that Ted Cruz calls out and says, well, aren't you forcing them to jump through hoops just to be able to publish a truth, a story by a newspaper that's been around for 200 years? That was started by, Hamilton, I guess? It's the fourth largest. Anyway, it just seems awfully strange how all of that seems to be playing out. There was a reasonably long video here. It was decent, but it was just Cruz kind of hammering on these guys. I can't really play it because I'm actually expecting to get my channel back today, so I can't play YouTube stuff anymore. But it's good. It's a good watch if you want. You can find it, and you can really look at what Ted Cruz was kind of saying. Scorch, it might fit in that genre. He certainly was a bit angry at a couple places, and there is this, Dorsey admits he's wrong, but yet at the same time, the New York Post has to go in and do this and do that, and then they can repost and everything will be fine. But that almost does kind of seem like a victory, and I think that's kind of what Cruz was calling out. Again, it's an interesting point of view, and it's perspective. Everything's perspective. But of course, Facebook, Google, Twitter execs are calling for alternatives instead of stripping the 230 protection they get. They're like, hey, wait, is there something else we can do? Because I think what they're seeing is if the 230 protections are literally removed, they're probably going to get opened up to all sorts of lawsuits. Or at the bare minimum, it's going to open up for other companies to open up immediately and claim they're going to uphold Section 230. And then everybody's going to go to those, period. Literally, it could bury these companies. And it wouldn't be hard to come up with something. It's effort and it's work, but to be able to come up with these concepts after you're basically just copying somebody anyway, it's not hard to copy somebody. Just ask kind of how China's grown in leaps and bounds, right? Kind of borrow people's technology and then build it yourself, and all of a sudden, hey, look at that, I've got a fancy fighter that we didn't actually develop. So again, pollsters are talking about percentage of African Americans or Black American voters are actually looking at Trump. And this is the first time in the history of the world ever that the Republican Party has apparently had this high a percentage of the African American community. It's unheard of. And there's always been this weird speculation, and I don't know, we'll see if it's ever true. But if the Republicans ever get above a certain percentage of that vote, and I want to say they're kind of above it now, but whatever. If anyone gets above that magic percentage, then most likely the Dems would lose the African American vote. It would actually go to the Republicans, and from what they're saying, I don't know if it's true. Certainly, history would always be the prover of that. But supposedly they won't come back. And we'll see, because they've been with the Democrat Party for a very long time. And obviously, for anybody that's somewhat of a historian, the Democrat Party does have a bit of a history that's almost kind of anti those sorts of things. So it is interesting how many people seem to fall on that like sword, like I've got to support the Democrats. It's like, historically, they've not really supported you. I mean, just saying. But it's to each his own, and that's certainly awesome. Now, finally, most important, and this is just weird, and this is something we're not hearing a lot about in general. There is a lot of heat going on around China, around Hong Kong, around the South China Sea. So you got the Philippines down there, you've got Japan over there, you've got China, Hong Kong, and some others with the Korea, North Korea, South Korea is kind of over there, right? So you've got all of these really tense kind of places all in this small area. And the United States is buddied up with Japan, Australia, Philippines, and I want to say India. They've been doing some exercises. Right now, I think they're doing a joint exercise with Japan. And there is a lot of contention around this. And apparently, what's really sparked a lot of concern or angst from the Japanese, certainly, is there's these islands out there, the Sengaku Island, and apparently China sent a Coast Guard boat. I don't know if it was cutter or what. I don't know what it was. It was a Coast Guard. Went out there and they were in the Sengaku waters for an extended period of time, for like a while. They made it sound like for, many, many hours or days or something weird where it was like, hey, you're across into our boundaries. And of course, China's like, no, this is ours. We own this, not you. So that being said, that's causing a little bit of frustration. So a larger exercise seems to be underway out there. And there's been some speculation kind of tying into all this. Again, there's a lot going on. This is why we've got, I think, 2 carrier groups out in that area is my understanding. But this one right here is the Ronald Reagan Carrier Strike Group. But I believe that, again, there is a second one out there. And the reason they are is because there's been discussions that depending on how the election goes, depending on all these things, that China may choose to take advantage of our disarray and confusion and try to actually attack Taiwan. Or at least take it over and literally send troops over to it. A lot of talk, a lot of saber rattling, and a lot of saving face by Communist China. So it's going to be interesting to see how these things all play together. But remember, a lot is going on right now. A lot is going on. This is not just the United States. This is the whole world. And of course, we've all got COVID on top of all that. 2020 is a year that will never be forgotten, or whatever year it is in China. This year will never be forgotten. And so we need to be open and aware and realize that we need to be aware. We need to be paying attention. We need to be loving and supportive of as many people around us as we can, even those that we disagree with. Somebody needs to step up and be the responsible one. I'm not saying be walked over. There's nothing like that in this at all. Be strong to your beliefs, but certainly be kind and compassionate in your ways. And I think if we can remember to do that and remember that we're all Americans here, I think we can get through this. It's just going to take us working together with others. Hopefully we can do that. But most importantly, and we've been reminded of this frequently, where we go one, we go all. It's On the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle.